Hello, Internet, and welcome to Bronies Remember. My name is Zenith.
My name is Onyx.
For those of you who are new to this series, we are a couple of bronies who've been around the block a few times, and our goal with this series is to go through the entirety of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, episode by episode, chronological order, and we just kind of want to take everybody down memory lane for a minute. Go over each of the episodes, talk about things as they're introduced, what we thought, what we expected, what we were surprised by, and just kind of relive a lot of the better days. So without further ado,
we are going to start with episode 1, Friendship is Magic, part 1, written by Lauren Faust and originally aired October 10th, 2010.
It's a long time ago.
Just right off the bat, we're introduced with a book opening up.
Our first impression, the storybook opening up. I mean, yeah. I did not know what to expect, personally. I didn't really know a whole lot about My Little Pony going into this. I had vague impressions of the earlier generations. I didn't know a whole lot about it, never paid attention to it, and was eventually convinced to sit down and watch the 4th generation. When I first opened up that video, we see the storybook opening up, and we are introduced to basically pure lore right off the gate. We're not introduced into anybody in particular, but we're given a plot point that becomes very, very important right away. We are shown about the appearance of Nightmare Moon in a series of storybook images that are both static and moving, if that makes sense. Like, the characters themselves are not really animated, but the images themselves are moving. I really like that. I thought that was a really nice way to open up the entire series.
Yeah, it was a great way to open the series. I mean, I was getting flashbacks to the opening of the first Shrek movie with the storybook. When I first watched the series, I was not expecting it to be as well written as it was. I thought it was just going to be, buy our toys.
Which is a theme that is rampant throughout the entire series. But
there's an actual story.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing for me, was that there's an actual story behind this. It's not just a bunch of characters running around doing whatever. There's actually a story behind this. There's actually a plot behind this whole cartoon. And that, for me, was, I think, the biggest surprise right out of the gate. Because I did not expect that from the franchise called My Little Pony. It was kind of out of left field for me. And, I'd say I was pleasantly surprised by that.
Yeah, it was definitely a nice opening. It felt easy to get into and start watching. It was really attractive right off the bat. The visuals were great. The art style is amazing for the opening sequence.
Can we talk about the art style for a second?
Yeah.
So, for those of you who don't know, My Little Pony Friendship is Magic was made in Flash animation, which means most of the assets are puppets, which have to be individually rigged and animated in order to function within the greater animation. I hadn't seen too many cartoons, like mass-produced cartoons, done up that way. So that, for me, was kind of a cool experience because it was different than just hand-drawn, or cel-shaded animation like what most people would think of when you hear cartoon.
Right.
And the characters, I thought all the characters were really well done. Just right out of the gate.
The character designs definitely are a little janky at first, and the rigging is a little janky, but over the time it smooths out, it gets better as the series goes. There's definitely a lot of noticeable little details that get changed over time, like the colors of the unicorn's magic and stuff.
Oh, sure. There's going to be little, improvements here and there.
Little improvements here and there.
Because as far as I know, all of the writers, or at least the animators, were pretty new to this particular rigging.
Yeah, and it's interesting that they went with a 2D program like Flash.
Yeah, as opposed to the more traditional hand-drawn.
Right.
I thought that was really neat. The first 90 seconds of the entire series, the story goes, we have 2 princesses, one who rules the day, one who rules the night, and the one who rules the night gets jealous of the one who rules the day. They have a battle. The younger princess who rules the night gets banished to the moon. With that, Equestria, the world that this series takes place in, knows peace and harmony for 1,000 years.
Yeah, and they were able to give us all that exposition in the first 90 seconds, which I don't think most other series or movies have really do. They take like 10 minutes to give us the intro or exposition of what's happened.
Yeah, they usually take their time giving us all the relevant information.
Yeah.
They just lay it all right there in front of us. And I'm not going to complain about that.
Yeah, I'm not either. They just cut right to the story, which is a good thing. And then, like, 90 seconds in, we're given our first glimpse of Twilight Sparkle, our first and main character, pretty much the whole series.
Basically considered to be the main protagonist of Generation 4. She's just a young unicorn at this point, still in school. We don't know a whole lot about her yet.
Little naive.
Little naive, a little...
Big bookworm.
Yeah, definitely a big bookworm.
Which I think a lot of the fandom has caught on to and adopted because they themselves are bookworms.
A lot of nerds out there.
Definitely a cartoon for the nerds. Then we get right into the classic opening sequence of Twilight floating down on the balloon and the song that everybody loves.
I'll be 90 years old on my deathbed and I'll still have this stuck in my head.
Oh, yeah. No. Who won't at this point?
It's a classic. I mean, they use it in every single episode from here till the series ended. Yeah, the song did not change.
Song didn't change. Maybe some of the visuals did, which was cool to see it evolve over time.
Yeah, the visuals do actually follow the story a little bit.
Yeah.
As things evolve within the show, the intro changes. But we'll get into that as it becomes relevant. As we cut back into the episode, we meet 3 other unicorns. We don't learn their names, but they do drop a name, Moondancer.
Which we don't hear about again until season 5.
Pretty crazy, but, whatever. We do find out, though, from the interaction here that Twilight is not the most sociable individual out there, and that she's definitely more concerned with books and knowledge and staying in the library than actually going out and socializing with her peers.
Which I think is why a lot of individuals that are introverted caught on to Twilight being a favorite character of theirs.
A lot of people can really, I think, relate to that sort of character. Having a protagonist that is very relatable is a excellent design choice, no matter what cartoon it is.
Yeah, I mean, you've got like 6 different characters, the main 6, that almost everybody can relate to at some point throughout the series.
But we'll get into them as we meet them throughout the episode. But for now, we actually meet Twilight's personal assistant, a young dragon by the name of Spike. He's kind of an interesting character, often relegated to sort of the goofy sidekick role in a lot of ways.
Yeah, goofy sidekick, comic relief.
He actually has a few moments throughout the series that we'll get into more as they happen. But he has some occasional, very interesting moments where he's shown to be a lot more wise than he lets on.
Yeah, and I mean, they portray him as a baby dragon right off the bat, but he definitely does not seem to be that young.
He's an interesting character to watch, although it pains me that the few times he is given the limelight generally are...
They don't do a lot with him.
No, he does not get done justice. But that's for another day. So, as Twilight runs back into the library, runs almost literally into Spike, we start learning more and more about this myth of the Mare in the Moon, or Nightmare Moon. And this is the plot for the entire series introduction, the 2-part episode that starts this entire adventure. We learn that there is a prophecy where Nightmare Moon, the evil princess, younger sister that was banished to the moon, is going to return and bring about eternal night, which is obviously problematic for a number of different reasons. It becomes rather apparent that even Spike doesn't take this seriously.
Yeah, like most ponies completely forgotten the history, and again, it's like a myth and legend type scenario, and Twilight's the only one that's freaking out about it.
Yeah, she's the only one that's paying any attention to this myth. She's the only one that really seems to even care, which becomes a theme throughout the rest of her adventures as she dictates a letter to Princess Celestia, who we find out is effectively her mentor, which is pretty crazy. I mean, you're just a young unicorn.
And your mentor is the princess or ruler of the entire kingdom.
The monarch of Equestria is her mentor, her teacher.
Yeah.
That's a pretty crazy detail to drop right off the bat. Something that is really kind of cool here is the letter gets delivered by Dragonfire.
Yeah, that was interesting because usually fire is depicted as used for destruction and all that type of mayhem, and that's what you would expect from a dragon is destruction. But it's interesting to see that it can be used for other magical purposes like instant text via Dragonfire.
Yeah, we see that Spike acts as a messenger for Twilight and acts as a sort of intermediary between Twilight and Princess Celestia.
The amount of detail that they were able to pack into Twilight's room at the school she's attending is also really neat. Because every single book on the bookshelf is its own different color, shape, different designs on them. There's an entire unicorn bust that we see in the background. There's the big time.
It's a big hourglass.
Big hourglass in the middle of the room, and just seeing it phase in front of the unicorn bust, and you see a glimpse of our main villain right off the bat in the background for those who were paying attention. It's kind of cool to see those little details, glimpses of what's going to happen.
There's a lot of foreshadowing that goes on leading up to the grand finale of the opening episode. And for those who are paying attention, it's a really cool treat. For those who don't pay attention, who go back and rewatch it, noticing a second time around, it's just as fun.
Finding all those little Easter eggs or little hidden details is always cool to see.
The Easter egg is a thing that continues throughout the entire series.
Oh, yeah.
There's one in particular recurring Easter egg that we will have to point out. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that later. There's going to be a lot of that going on, by the way. But yeah, the level of detail so far, we've only seen Canterlot, and we've only seen a small portion of Canterlot, which is the capital city of Equestria in this particular era. The architecture is incredible.
Yeah.
It's very,
very detailed.
It's very detailed. It's like very high fantasy with like hints of
Arabic.
It's like vaguely Arabian in style. It's really, really cool. As Onyx was saying, within the library, every book is different. Every book is a different color, different style. It's some are leaning, some are not. The animators spent a lot of time crafting this world just right from the get-go. And you can tell that they were taking this project seriously. And that is really, really, really cool to see.
Yeah, it's definitely a cool thing to see that the backdrops are amazing. The set the characters interact with is really cool.
Just the level of detail is incredible, even within the characters. I mean, just to watch their movements and to watch their eyes especially.
Yes, the expressions that they're able to do with these models and rigs is very impressive.
So we get our first little travel montage after Princess Celestia replies and states that Twilight is to head the organization of an annual event known as the Summer Sun Celebration, which is the longest day of the year.
Which we could equate to the summer solstice.
Yes. Effectively the summer solstice. Really, actually, I love the fact that they tie in like real world
holidays and traditions.
I think that's really fun.
And just give them different names that are similar, but...
You can tell what's going on, but it's not quite the same. But anyways, Celestia tells Twilight that she needs to go head all of the organization for this event. And this event is going to take place in a town called Ponyville.
Here we get more horse puns for the city names.
All of the horse puns. They will not stop.
Already starting off with Canterlot, and now we get...
Ponyville. And Ponyville is where much of the series is going to take place.
Probably like 80% of it.
At least. At least. Ponyville is the home base for the character cast we call the main six. And Ponyville is really cool. It's like a Victorian, like Tudor-esque architecture style. You've got the exterior wood brace design with the thatch roofs. It's a really neat little quaint town.
I'm almost reminded of some German architecture as
well. A little bit.
With a lot of how the wood beams are accented heavily.
Yeah, a little bit. We arrive in Ponyville. The interesting thing is that up until this point, we had only seen unicorns.
We did get to see a couple Pegasus drop her off.
Yeah, Twilight is taken to Ponyville on a chariot pulled by...
two Pegasus.
A pair of Pegasus who we later discover, based on their uniform, are part of the Royal Guard.
Yeah.
Which, okay, there's clearly more to this character than we've been led to believe so far. If she's in direct correspondence with the princess and she gets to be personally transported around the country on a chariot pulled by royal guards.
Yeah, that's a little interesting.
There's more to Twilight than we've seen so far.
Definitely.
Upon arrival in Ponyville, we are immediately met by a very, very pink pony.
Yay, Pinkie Pie is introduced, but has like no lines right away.
Nope, instead, Twilight tries to say hello. Pinky
gasps and dash off, and I was immediately thinking Roadrunner, just zooming off screen.
Very sort of Hanna-Barbera-esque animation, I think.
Yes.
From there, Twilight seems very confused about what just happened, and rightfully so, I think.
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't be confused by somebody that just like gasps and run off after you say hello?
Yeah, I mean, come on, who does that?
But I mean, we get to meet our second main cast member.
We do. We are actually taken to our next... Technically third, yes. But we are immediately taken to the next big location that we see throughout the rest of the series, Sweet Apple Acres, which is home to the Apple family.
Just in the first episode alone, one thing I noticed rewatching was on the left side of just the general shot of Sweet Apple Acres is a little building that has a carrot on top and a carrot field off on the left screen, which we don't see that in any other shot of Sweet Apple Acres.
At least not that we can recall.
Right.
But it's also neat to notice that they're not just growing carrots and apples, they're also growing corn.
Yeah.
They've got a full-on farm going on here.
Yeah, corn, a chicken coop, pig pen.
It's a full-blown operation they got going on here.
The introduction to Applejack, dashing past, kicking a tree, and all the apples falling out of the tree perfectly into buckets.
Earth Pony Magic.
Yeah, before it was called Earth Pony Magic.
Applejack is a really interesting character. She's the one that I think most people would consider already fully fleshed out.
Texas personified.
Very, very much Texas personified. She's already got, as we'll learn in the coming episodes, she's already got her whole life figured out. She's an apple farmer. She has a farm. She's got her family. She's got everything she wants.
She doesn't really do a whole lot outside of farming.
Nope, she's very much your stereotypical Southern-style girl, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yep, help you out at the drop of a hat.
Of which she's always seen sporting a very large brown Stetson.
Very Texan.
Very, very Texan. Applejack is a character. I mean, I like Applejack.
Applejack's a good, solid, steady character.
She's a very well-rounded, just right from the beginning, she's a very well-rounded character who really doesn't need to improve, but as we'll see throughout the series, she'll go through a lot of very interesting situations, and we'll get to see how she gets to handle all of the situations. There's some really surprising twists and turns in her story.
Yeah, there definitely are. And then we are led into meeting a lot of the family, which is typical of your large farm families.
Very much all of your first cousins, your second cousins, all of your twice removed, and so on and so forth. It's the whole family tree here.
Yeah.
Of which, though, not very many are sticking around, but we'll get into that later.
Yeah, I mean, we do get to meet several of them later, but that's not for a good while.
Yeah, we'll meet more of the Apple family later on.
I mean, obviously we are introduced to three that will stick around quite a bit: Apple Bloom, Big Macintosh, and Granny Smith.
Yes, they are the ones who actually live on Sweet Apple Acres with Applejack. But we'll learn more about those three later on. Although it's unfortunate we won't see a whole lot about Apple Bloom and her story for a good couple episodes.
Right.
From there, we go back into Ponyville, and we meet our next major character in a rather comical way.
Out of nowhere, just boom, Twilight gets taken out.
Just tackled right into a mud pit by the one, the only Rainbow Dash.
And the original generator of pony memes.
All of the original memes.
Just within the first
minute of meeting her, we get the first meme.
10 seconds flat.
Clearing the skies in 10 seconds flat.
Classic
OG Brony meme. I mean, you really don't get any older than that.
Nope. Rainbow's definitely a very cocky character.
Very sure of herself, very egocentric, and very clearly capable, which is a very interesting sort of counterbalance to the usual arrogant character that turns out they can't really back up their own words.
Yes.
Here we have a character who is not only a little full of herself and a little arrogant, not mean necessarily, but definitely overconfident, but she's capable.
Yes.
She can actually walk the walk.
Yeah, I mean, she proves this by clearing the skies around Ponyville really quickly.
All while talking about wanting to be a part of essentially the Blue Angels of Equestria, known as the Wonderbolts,
which is definitely a plot device we see, or a subplot throughout her character development throughout the series.
Yeah, not just with her, but in other instances as well. The Wonderbolts are a very key aspect of a lot of modern day Equestria lore. And it's really interesting to see how their story gets intertwined with those of our main heroes as well.
Right. There's definitely a lot to unpack with that subplot for Rainbow's character development throughout the series.
There's so much to unpack.
Yeah.
But really, what's interesting here is we don't learn a lot about the main character's motivations so far, except Rainbow. She's the only one whose motivations we find out right out the gate.
She wants to be a Wonderbolt.
And there's really nothing more to it than that.
Yup.
So from there, we move on to the Ponyville Town Hall, which is a towering, beautiful building right in the middle of town. And inside, we can see it has been painstakingly decorated. Banners, streamers, flowers, the whole works.
Again, the amount of details that the animators and artists went into is incredible. Like, most cartoons don't delve into a whole lot of detail right off the bat.
No, it at least in my experience, I don't find very many cartoons that have this particular level of detail. Because you can see the folds and the curtains. You can see shading. You can see so much detail just right from the get-go. And it's just incredible to me. It's one of the things that really drew me into the show when I first started watching.
Yeah, and the amount of colors that are used, too, is also...
Oh, God, yeah. It's not like some cartoons that, like, settle on a particular color scheme. Like, everything's done in sepia or, like, black and white or whatever. No, this is a very, very colorful show. As, of course, it should be.
They are trying to sell colorful toy ponies.
It's a world full of colorful, pastel-colored tiny horses.
Yes.
So, within the town hall, we meet our next major character, Rarity. There's a lot to unpack with Rarity.
Yeah. I mean, fashionista, wannabe, very good character design, I think.
Very excellent character design. Elegant, but not overly complicated.
Right. Also screams high society right off the bat, too.
Just with her mannerisms. I mean, she's got that sort of posh accent going on.
Yeah.
Very apparent that she wants to be part of the high society in Canterlot. Just right out of the gate.
Yes.
Personally, not sure that that's actually where she would be happiest, but that's a topic for another day.
Yeah. And we also get to see Spike's instant infatuation with her.
And that is a constant theme for, God, how many seasons?
All of them.
It's a pretty interesting subplot that becomes relevant a lot early on. Less so as time goes on, but...
Yeah, less so, but it's pretty subplot for Spike, pretty much.
Well, one of the big driving factors for Spike is doing things with Rarity. But from there, they move back outside, and we are introduced...
to our final main cast member.
Fluttershy.
Which is a huge fan favorite for...
I mean, who doesn't love Fluttershy? I mean, she's adorable,
you're right.
She's cute. You know, she's got that real sort of timid, helpless thing going on that so many people...
Everybody wants to protect the little cinnamon roll that is Fluttershy.
Absolute little cinnamon roll. I mean, just the way she curls up when Twilight just tries to get her to say her name.
Yeah.
What is really interesting about Fluttershy, we find out right away, without them ever saying a word about it, that she is multi-talented.
Definitely.
Because as far as the Summer Sun celebration is concerned, she's orchestrating the music. And she's doing so by commanding birds to follow a song.
Yeah, that is very impressive. You don't see very many characters that do that at all.
I don't think we see any other characters talk to animals, at least not in the way Fluttershy does.
Yeah, definitely.
The fact that she's not only capable of conversing with animals, but can basically create an orchestra out of a flock of birds.
Yeah, directing different birds to each hit their own specific note.
I mean, it's very much sort of brushed over and not really spoken about, but that's some pretty incredible talent to be showing right out of the gate.
Yes, it is.
And from there, we see that Fluttershy is absolutely big into
animals.
Basically non-ponies, because she immediately strikes up a conversation with Spike, despite not being able to even tell Twilight her name.
Yeah, that is just like... Oh, hey, I'm not going to tell you my name.
I'm not going to talk
I'm going to talk to your pet.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk to the scary unicorn. I'm going to talk to the dragon.
Yes. It's like the one person that you invite to a party, but they spend the entire party playing with the dog.
Yep. That is exactly what's going on here. And of course, Twilight finds an excuse to get away from Fluttershy, who has followed them back to the Golden Oaks Library, where
which
Twilight is currently staying.
is another relevant large location that we see throughout this first 4 seasons.
But we'll talk about that later. That's spoilers.
Yeah.
Golden Oaks Library becomes Twilight's home, although it's not really established right away. We're not really told where Twilight's going to be staying, but it's this library. And inside is a whole party waiting for her.
Yeah, that was not what I was expecting from a library scene.
No. Usually, as Twilight points out, libraries are quiet.
Yes. And then we get to see several background characters, again, that throughout the series make appearances, just background characters, although the fandom kind of had a field day with them in the fan fiction realms and fan art.
That's putting it lightly.
Oh, yeah.
So, for those who are new to the herd or weren't around or are just now discovering this particular series, the early days of the Brony fandom saw everybody giving every character, big or small, their own personalities, their own names, and a ton of fan work. Whether it's visual art, animation, story, you name it, it was done.
Yes, and some of these background characters were even the show writers adapted some of these personalities for.
We'll see this again in season 5,
episode 100.
Yes, that I'm looking forward to that episode.
That's a fun one.
That I love that episode. The background characters, we see them a lot. I mean, if I'm being honest, it's mostly just to fill in space in the background.
Yeah, just
reusing assets to fill in empty voids instead of having to redraw or recreate a new puppet for every time they want a character sitting at a bench outside.
Right.
Which, there's nothing wrong with that. But we bronies, we love our background characters.
Oh, yeah.
And we see so many of them right away.
The visual gags in this are also really fun. We get to see a reference to Pokemon almost within the first episode.
Ah, yes. The Twilight Rapidash transformation.
Yeah.
Hot sauce.
Yeah, hot sauce in...
Cupcakes and punch?
Yeah, why would you have hot sauce right next to the cupcakes and
maniac
punch?
Would do that?
Oh yeah, Pinkie Pie.
Of course, yes. The Pink Menace. The Pinky gags never end.
Yeah, the visual gags are great. Pinky gags are great.
And apparently there's a rave in the library tonight.
Yeah, first episode, you already hear rave music in the library. That's kind of ridiculous.
But of course we find out it's because everybody's got to stay up all night because they need to be awake when Celestia appears in Ponyville and raises the sun for the longest day in Equestria.
I'm almost thinking like this is pretty much their version of New Year's.
Probably.
Everybody stays up all night, New Year's Eve, to watch ball drop, year change ever, but I guess they kind of combined the two almost for Summer Sun Celebration because that seems to be one of the biggest holidays that we are introduced to.
They certainly act like it's a pretty big deal. I mean, if the princess personally travels to wherever the celebration's being held,
yeah,
and raises the sun,
yeah, that's pretty big.
And there's a lot to unpack on that, but we'll learn more about how that works later on.
Yeah, and how other holidays work too.
There's a lot of holidays we discussed throughout the entirety of the season. Not just throughout the rest of the series, but just season 1 alone.
Yeah, and then we get back to Twilight freaking out about this prophecy that is going to happen.
Yes, because at this point, we're pretty close to the end of part 1. We get back to Twilight talking about the prophecy, Nightmare Moon appearing, and it pans into a shot of the night sky, and we see the moon. And the moon, curiously enough, has a silhouette of what appears to be a unicorn.
Yeah, I thought that visual was awesome. Because I also feel like, it definitely was a reference to the Man in the Moon.
Certainly. Definitely another sort of horse pun type thing that gets shoehorned in almost every episode.
Yeah,
but or cares, right?
Based off of a real life equivalent, sort of. And then
we see the 4 stars sort of circling the moon. And they approach, and they get closer, and then they reach the moon. The moon glows brightly, and the silhouette is gone. So, personally, I was like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
From there, of course, none of the characters notice this. But instead, they're all gearing up for the actual raising of the sun, which, curiously enough,
they're all indoors. Yeah, they're all indoors at Town Hall. But for a celebration that really needs to be outside to watch the sunrise.
But you can get a glimpse outside through the tops of the rafters of the Town Hall. And True. It looks like it's right before dawn. You can see a glow in the sky.
Kind of that light pinkish purple glow of the sun getting ready to rise.
Which is a curious implication if you've watched the rest of the series and understand how day and night works in this world.
Yep.
But there's a lot of characters in the town hall waiting for the princess to appear and raise the sun. We are introduced to the mayor.
The mayor. Yep.
We meet Mayor of Ponyville.
Such a fun pun. Mayor.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, the stuff that we see from Mayor and how quickly she kind of becomes irrelevant.
Yep. I mean, reoccurring character for certain parts of the series.
There's a lot of early characters that kind of fall by the wayside, which is not terribly unusual.
No, it's like every other series. You'll have a few characters that only appear once. You'll have a few that make a reappearance every once in a while.
Yeah, we don't see too terribly much of Mayor past the first season. A little cameo here and there, and in season 5 we see her again, but not too much of her. She announces that Princess Celestia should appear and raise the sun, except Princess Celestia is not there. She's
Shocker.
Gone. Dun dun dun! She's gone, and in her place is Nightmare Moon, the first actual villain of Friendship is Magic, makes her appearance. She's also the first Alicorn we see.
Yeah, outside of the short little 90-second intro with the book. But those Alicorns in the visual pictures look nothing like
No, they
Nightmare
are
Moon.
completely different than the actual very real characters they are based on.
Yeah, and Nightmare Moon's design is...
Oh, her design is so cool.
It is so good.
It is so good. I love the armor that she's got.
Yeah.
The helmet with the curls.
Whoever designed Nightmare Moon did a really good job.
You know, the little, like, dragon slit eyes. Like, I thought that was a really cool touch.
Yeah, the dragon's eyes was really cool.
Nightmare Moon, her whole motivation is she's jealous that people shun her knight.
Ponies.
Her beautiful knight.
Yes.
Well, as we learned, it's not just ponies, but...
Yeah, ponies. There's just so many species.
We
introduced.
learned about a lot of species that live in Equestria. But her whole spiel is that the night gets shunned and things only happen during the day.
Yeah.
And she wants people to experience her beautiful night. Which, okay, for a kid's show, you know, that's pretty on par for the sort of, like, scare factor.
Yeah. Or villainous.
You know, sort of motivation.
Motivation, yeah.
Because this is a family-friendly show. You know, it's not meant to be anything serious.
Yeah. Just a family-friendly show to sell toys.
That's really all it was. I'm sure all they ever intended it to be. Obviously, it became a lot more because it went on for 9 whole seasons.
9 seasons and a movie, plus a spin-off series.
Plus a follow-up spin-off series that we don't talk about.
Yeah. And then a 5th generation.
Yeah, a follow-up 5th generation.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother thing.
And I mean, not only do we get that, but just the massive amount of fan art and fan fiction and different groups within the Brony community.
I have followed, throughout my years, a number of different fandoms. Not nearly to the degree that I've followed this one. But I have followed other fandoms.
Yeah.
And none of them were ever as prolific as Bronies were, especially in the early days.
Oh, yeah. And the amount of conventions that popped up in the early days was ridiculous.
I've never seen a fandom with, like, fandom-specific conventions before this.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you had your Comic-Cons, you had your anime
well,
cons.
I think you had, like, a Star Trek one or something.
Well, okay, yeah, you had the Star Trek one.
There's also a Star Wars one as well.
Yeah,
but
fair enough.
most others are just, like, general broad
They
conventions.
usually get lumped into other ones, like, say, your Pokemon fandom.
It kind of gets lumped in with like their
like
anime,
your anime or
stuff.
occasionally your furry cons and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
At least I have never heard of a Pokemon specific convention in the United States.
Outside of competitions for the video game or the card game. That's
but even those are like tournaments, not conventions.
Yeah, true.
But yeah, crazy the amount of stuff that this fandom popped off just because of what we saw in these first few episodes.
Yeah, and a 4chan post.
Yeah. yeah, the 4chan post.
I can't forget to mention that.
Oh god, 4chan. Oh. One other thing I want to mention about this whole sequence with Nightmare Moon's initial reveal is we get a shot of 3 little fillies. One of them we know.
Apple Bloom.
The other 2 we don't know, but they're huddled together like they know each other.
Yeah, which we find out later that They don't know each other yet.
But they get a whole separate story all on their own.
Yeah, and it's nice to see that we have a secondary group of characters that have their own storyline within the series.
They have their own trials and tribulations to go through as they discover themselves.
Yeah, which is... I was not expecting to get two different groups with their own stories going through, plus all the side characters that have their own little
cameos and everything. There's a lot of very surprising cameos.
Yeah.
And the fact that in future episodes, because we're only at the end of part 1, by the way. There's still a part 2 to wrap this story up. But in the future episodes, we get other main characters. They get their own episodes. It's not just a story focused on Twilight.
Yeah.
Each of the main characters have their own
story arcs.
They all have their own motivations and their own history.
Yeah.
We learn a lot about these characters, and I am here for that.
Pretty much become something that everybody gravitates towards, is wanting to see these characters grow throughout the series.
And grow they do.
In more ways than one.
Yes. But with that, part 1 ends with Nightmare Moon declaring that the night shall last forever.
Which is another meme. Another instant classic meme from the fandom.
All of the memes.
And cliffhanger.
And at that point, you knew you just had to go watch the next one.
Oh, yeah. It's like, I don't think anybody was really expecting to go in and have to watch 2 episodes when they first watched the Generation 4.
Oh, no. Like, when I first started watching this and I got to the end and I saw the ending card with "to be continued" on it, I was like, well, crap, I'm going to have to go watch the next episode to see how this ended.
I was just like, I'll give the first episode a try just to see what all the hype is about. Watch it, and I'm like, gosh darn it, gotta watch the second one now. To find out what happens.
And by the way, folks, those of you who started paying attention to this show later on didn't necessarily have to deal with this, but back in the early days, the 2-parters often aired on different dates.
Yeah,
They did not air on the same day. So, as we move on into episode 2, which is Friendship is Magic, Part 2.
Also written by Lauren Faust, and it aired 12 days later on October 22nd, 2010.
12 whole days to finish the story.
Yeah, most of the time when a series premieres or ends, they throw both of them right. Like if it's a 2-part opener, both same day, they are right back to back.
They usually turn it into a whole special time slot on whatever
network it was airing, which isn't really a big thing anymore.
No, not as much.
Now that there's streaming. And
everything's Netflix and Hulu and Disney Plus and God knows what else.
Yeah, that and whatever else is coming in the future.
I don't want to think about that.
All right, and then so episode 2 pretty much just picks up right where we left off on episode 1 with Twilight
reeling over the fact that she was in fact correct.
Yeah. And then
really interesting to see how quickly Twilight does spring into action. Nightmare Moon immediately beats off the few royal guards that are there.
Yeah, 3 of them with lightning out of nowhere. And it's also interesting because most unicorns have like a magical aura that appears out of their horns when they're using magic, whereas Nightmare Moon, her eyes glow. Her magic acts a little bit differently, and then her ethereal mane is kind of also
tactile a little bit, like
tactile, yeah,
like it acts like a separate, almost appendage. Like we see it briefly at the end of part 1 where she reaches out and flicks somebody's mane with the end of her ethereal hair.
Yeah,
it's a really interesting character design. And not something we see really ever again even with any of the other alicorns.
Yeah.
And there are other alicorns that appear. Obviously, there's Princess Celestia, but they're not the only 2. We see Nightmare Moon turn into a puff of smoke and leave. Just bounces out of the town hall. And we're treated to Twilight tucking Spike in, who had fainted from the appearance of Nightmare Moon.
Yes.
And she starts tearing apart her library, looking for answers.
And our other 5 main cast members follow her there because they figure out that Twilight might know something.
Twilight might actually know a thing or two.
And then, of course, Twilight's still looking for the book, and
predictably, Pinky happens to know exactly where it is.
It was under E. So
The pinky gags never end.
Pinky gags never end. We get introduced to another major plot point: the elements of harmony.
Which is a very important bit of lore for the world of Equestria as we know it. And
like 5 seasons worth of plot.
quite a long time, they become the, like, Deus Ex Machina of this world. You assemble, they're like the Dragon Balls almost. You assemble them and everything suddenly becomes right with the world.
Yeah.
Except you don't get a wish, you get unimaginable power.
Yes. Power for good.
Yes, the power of friendship.
And as the elements are getting introduced, each element that's mentioned, we get a pan of one of our main characters.
Another little bit of foreshadowing.
Yep.
Which, predictable. It basically sets up the entire episode. We learn more about who these characters are and what they represent.
Yes.
So from here, we determine that the elements were left behind at an old ruin. In the next big location that we see within the series, the Everfree Forest.
Oh, yeah. I don't know how many episodes the Everfree Forest is mentioned, or
way too many.
We need to do a running count of how many times the Everfree Forest is mentioned or makes an appearance.
So the Everfree Forest is
supposed to be this big spooky forest that
doesn't obey the laws of Equestria. It
doesn't obey the laws of magic.
Things get a little freaky deaky in there, but it's apparently like right next to Ponyville, relatively speaking, because they're able to get there pretty quick.
Within like a few minutes in some of the episodes.
There's another character we get introduced to later on in this season that lives in a hut at the edge of the Everfree Forest, and we learn that her hut is just outside of town.
Yeah, which is like, okay.
So later on...
It's really close to Ponyville.
Really close to Ponyville. I don't know why we're on this tangent, but we are. So we enter the Everfree Forest, and we can see that several of the characters are immediately kind of wigged out by being there.
They've never been in there before.
Yeah, find it.
Wouldn't you be
spooky.
Scared about going into some spooky ass building or place you've never been, and it's just kind of creepy and you get bad vibes from it?
Well, it doesn't help when one of the main characters decides to do the whole flashlight over the face gag and spook you.
Thanks, Rainbow.
We find out that Rainbow's a bit of a prankster.
Oh, yeah. Prankster 101. Laugh at everything.
So, from here, we get introduced to the gimmick of this particular episode, which I don't think has an official name, but we're going to go ahead and refer to it as the Trials of Nightmare Moon.
Yeah, definitely. We see Nightmare Moon collapse a cliff underneath the hoofs of our heroes, and then we get to see the first test of one of the elements being Applejack's and Honesty.
So, the cliff falls. 4 of them can't fly. So, of course, they tumble down the cliffside. We see Fluttershy and Rainbow Dash rescue Pinkie Pie and Rarity. Applejack manages to save herself on a loose hanging root, but Twilight continues to slide down until she falls over another cliff and barely hangs on. Applejack, seeing Twilight in danger, lets go and slides down to her. She grabs her and keeps her from falling.
And then tells her, pretty much just trust me, let go, and then Rainbow and Fluttershy catch her. In hindsight, I have to laugh because we find out later that Twilight knows how to use teleportation magic, and she could have just teleported to a safe location, but...
Yeah. Loopholes, plot holes, what?
Yes. We can't have the easy way out.
No, of course not. So Applejack gets herself out of danger by just hopping down the cliff.
Yeah, I mean...
Because, why not, right?
Yep, and then instantly... commercial break.
we see the Nightmare Moon smoke come out of the bushes
and go towards a shadowy figure.
A shadowy figure that we very quickly learn to be a manticore, which is a lion, bat, scorpion amalgamation.
Hybrid. I believe it's from Greek mythology.
I believe so. I'm admittedly not very well rounded on a lot of my old school mythology, as I should be.
But Again, another mythological creature. We've already got Pegasus and unicorns, and a winged unicorn known as an alicorn.
But that name is not official yet.
Not until the fandom really makes it official.
But we see this manticore blocking a narrow canyon that they now have to get through because they're now at the bottom of the valley instead of along the top.
Yes, and this manticore is pissed.
This manticore is not having any of it. It is angry. And here we get to something I did not expect to see. A fight scene.
Yeah, fight scene. And the first pony to throw a punch, being Rarity, was unexpected.
Very unexpected. Yeah, in hindsight, Rarity, the prissy, super
doesn't want to get mud on her hoofs.
Punches the fashionista gives a hooful of just angst right into this manticore's face.
Yeah, and then we see the Applejack try her luck, doesn't work. Rainbow Dash tries, gets tossed away.
Out. Literally, just
everybody looks like every pony looks like they're about to charge,
except Pinkie Pie, who just bounces along.
Pinkie Pie's cycle, she just bounces everywhere. That's a whole thing. And then Fluttershy is the one who ends up stopping the Manticore.
Which, by the way, the whole time she'd been asking them all to wait quietly because that's her thing.
Yep. And then we find out that the Manticore has a big thorn in its paw, and this is pretty much trial number 2.
Yeah, this is trial number 2, the test of kindness.
Yes.
Where we find out that treating the Manticore here with a little bit of kindness revealed the problem, which was the thorn in the paw.
Yep. And then they all just walk right past.
Yep, they just walk right past it.
And then at this moment, Twilight's starting to getting little inklings of correlation between these new friends that she's making and these artifacts that she's looking for.
The puzzle pieces are starting to fall into place, but we're not there yet.
And then we get to
our first song.
That and some jokes that adults would probably get watching this.
Oops,
or at least
I stepped in something.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, it might just be mud in the show, but everybody else knows what...
We all know what's up.
Yeah.
So, they run into a very dark grove. Like, even by the Everfree Forest standards, it's pretty flippin' dark.
Yeah, it's like the tree canopy is really dense, and now the trees are starting to look a little spooky, and Pinkie's just laughing at them.
They got these scary faces, they've got sharp teeth and scary eyes, and the branches are like arms reaching down to grab them. And Pinkie's just sitting there laughing at them.
And burst into song out of nowhere. And my first impression when I was like, "Oh, great! It's gonna be one of those series,
one of those cartoons
where there's a musical number every other episode or whatever." But most of the songs are pretty dang good.
On that note, I was never really big into musicals, but oh my god, does this series have some really banger songs.
Yeah, Daniel Ingram, who wrote most of these songs, did an amazing job.
Absolute incredible job with many of the songs. And there are a few musical episodes.
And like, not only that, but we also started to see the spawning of pony music videos and remixes of these songs.
And even original tunes.
Yeah.
And we mentioned fan art and fan fiction.
We forgot to mention the fan music.
It's its own genre.
Yeah, that's its whole...
There's a whole library of Brony music out there.
Thousands of songs.
Literally thousands upon thousands upon thousands of songs. It would take God knows how many months to try to listen to all of them.
Yeah, if you can even find them all.
Well, there's an archive out there.
There is, yeah.
There's an archive.
There's an archive for almost everything in the pony fandom.
It's a scary thought, really. But yeah, we get our first song, Giggle at the Ghosties, where we find out that maybe laughing is the answer to things that scare you rather than simply being afraid and freezing up. And if you couldn't figure out by now, we find out that Pinkie represents
the element of laughter,
just as Fluttershy represents kindness.
And Applejack, honesty.
But we're not still there yet. There's a couple more characters that need to go through their trials.
We also get a lot more of the personalities of the Made 6 starting to pop up, too.
They are very snarky. during this adventure.
Yes, they are.
They're very, very snarky, and I am here for it.
There's a lot of snark throughout the entire series.
It's great because they're not just like, because you expect it to be a little bit more kid friendly, but this is very much like the banter that they do between them is something you would very much expect out of almost like an SNL skit.
Almost. I would say it's definitely like, it feels more like it's a cartoon for pre-teen, late teen, rather than toddlers and
Yeah.
6, 7, 8-year-olds.
It's pretty great, and definitely more than what I was expecting.
Yeah, I'm still surprised that the fandom blew up the way it did, and the majority of people that watch it tend to identify as male.
It is pretty curious.
But I mean, like, the community is amazing. We have people from all walks of life that watch it. I've seen individuals that are like in their 60s and 70s that are watching this have been at conventions.
Yep. So I used to be a part of a pretty big brony group back in the early days before it kind of petered out and fell apart. But one of the main runners of that particular group was this dude in his like 50s. And just the sheer variety of people that were in an otherwise very localized group. This is a group just for the state I was living in at the time.
Yeah,
It's
just amazing that the audience is such a wide range of all genders, all ages. It's like you don't really see that outside for other cartoons at all. Maybe Pokemon, but that's about it.
There's a couple of anime, sure, but certainly not really with Western animation.
No, not with Western animation. Definitely not.
No, I mean, then remember, this came out in 2010, so this is before like BoJack Horseman and Adventure Time and a lot of those shows that tended to draw a more wide audience.
Yeah, a much wider audience. And this was also when cartoons were kind of going through a phase of some didn't last more than a season, and I'm surprised 9 seasons is a long time for any show to go.
Anybody expected. I mean, so a little bit of spoiler here, but this show was only scheduled to have 3 seasons. And even then...
2.5.
Yeah,
really.
2.5. Because the 3rd season was only 13 episodes, whereas every other season was 26.
Yeah.
They expected this show to be over at the end of season 3.
Yeah, and then, boom, they dropped season 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 on us.
One every year.
Yeah, and then technically a 10th season if you're one of the comic readers.
Sure, yeah, we had the quote unquote season 10 that came out after season 9 officially ended.
Right, but anyways, we get to our next trial with another character that is introduced, Stephen Magnet.
Although we don't learn his name for a good hot minute.
True, we don't learn his name until season 5.
Season 5 seems pretty important.
Yeah, very important. And we
learned that Stephen Magnet is himself a bit of a fashionista of sorts.
Very worried about his look. Pretty vain.
Pretty vain, yes. Has a very beautifully coiffed set of hair.
Yeah. Really magnificent manicured mustache, too.
Which has been torn in half by
Nightmare Moon as she flew past.
So, of course, our resident fashionista, Rarity, steps up to the plate, tears off a scale.
Yeah, ow?
Yeah, ow. Actually reaches out, bites a scale, and tears it off.
And Stephen Magnet's response is great. It's like, why did you do that?
What did you do that for? And we're all like, Rarity, what the hell? Of course, we see Rarity hold the scale up like a blade.
Yeah, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, she's going to stab something.
And then we hear the classic shing as something gets cut, and we find out she has cut her tail off.
Yeah, it was like, okay, well, that's interesting, but we also learned that, yeah, she's definitely the element of generosity.
Because her cut tail becomes the other half of Stephen Magnet's mustache.
Rarity definitely would be a pony that would give you the shirt off her back if she had one.
The proverbial jacket, all that good stuff. You know, just Rarity as a character, having watched, this whole thing, she's a really fascinating character.
Definitely.
Like she gives off an air of someone who would behave a certain way, and she definitely does behave in a very stereotypical way, just like you would expect.
Yeah.
But then she has her moments where it's just like, whoa, like just the amount of crap that she takes.
Also, she's super sassy.
Very. Oh my god.
I mean,
they all have their moments, but Rarity in particular had some of the best one-liners.
I mean, if you want a drama queen, Rarity is definitely the character for the series.
Rarity is the drama queen.
It's like, what group of friends does not have a drama queen?
Yeah, Rarity is this group's drama queen. I really enjoyed seeing her grow throughout the rest of the series.
Oh yeah, Rarity was definitely a fun character to follow along on her development.
There's a particular episode in season 4 that I'm really looking forward to, where she is just fantastic.
Yes, which leads us into our next trial and last trial.
Rainbow Dash. They come to a bridge.
That's out. Twilight almost falls over the cliff again, rushing headlong.
Rainbow Dash keeps her from
falling. It's like Twilight asks, "How are we going to get across?" Rainbow flaps her wings, of course.
Yep. Flies over, grabs the other half of the bridge, brings it up. And we're met with an interesting set of characters calling themselves the Shadow Bolts.
Which we don't ever hear that term again until we get into the spin-off series Equestria Girls.
Within Friendship and Magic, this is not a name we ever hear again, which is a shame. I think there was a lot of potential here.
They had some really cool designs on their costumes.
I love their flight suits.
Yeah,
the black and purple with the gold trim and the skulls. Oh my god.
Yeah, it's like pretty much a counterpart to the Blue Angels, which is what the Wonderbolts are based off of, but definitely no real life equivalent that I can think of right now.
Not that I can think of, not unless the Russians have something. But these characters are not actually ponies. They turn out to be
just
manifestations made by Nightmare Moon.
Yeah. Turn back into her ethereal mane and vanish after Rainbow proves that she is going to stick by her friends more than give up. She won't give up her friends over her own desires.
Because Rainbow, as we've already established, wants to be known as the best flyer in Equestria. And the Shadow Bolts offer a spot as their captain to Rainbow Dash, which, had she accepted, opens up an entire rabbit hole of possibilities.
Yeah. I think there's a few fan fictions out there that explore Rainbow Dash giving up on her friends. There's definitely other possibilities from alternate timelines that we won't get into yet.
Alternate timelines in various other media.
Yeah.
There's a lot to dig into there. But Rainbow refuses because she is loyal.
Loyalty is definitely something you would definitely want in a friend. Any of these elements that our main heroes represent is something that a friend should show.
You would definitely want a friend who displays these sorts of qualities.
Yeah, it's like they don't have to be like super apparent, but
now they don't need to be paragons of their virtues.
Yeah, they just need to show a little bit of each. Which I also feel like this fandom definitely came together based around, a lot of it was making friends and identifying with whichever main character fit their particular personality the most. Yeah, definitely. Now I know there's some members in the community that went a little hardcore with some of the characters,
only a little bit.
But no, the friendships that this community has brought together, and this show has, like, I'm pretty sure a lot of people in the Brony community would never have made friends or met or had the opportunities to meet the people that they are now call friends if they had never watched this show.
I mean, I know that applies to me.
Same.
I would literally not be here right now if it weren't for this show.
Yeah, no, I probably would have been doing something else.
I mean, I couldn't even tell you where or what I would be doing at this point, because my entire adult life was shaped around clicking play on that very first episode and getting sucked into the rabbit hole of G4.
Yeah. What a rabbit hole and wild ride it's been.
God, even back like I said, I started watching in 2011. That's 12 years.
Yeah.
12 years I have been watching this cartoon.
And I started watching early 2015, so it's been quite a while.
Yeah, literally my entire adult life is centered around everything that has happened since I started watching this particular cartoon.
Yeah, it's like it's been
friends that I've made, like the opportunities that I've had. I can literally trace all of it back to the moment I pulled this up on YouTube. Because back in them days, you could find whole episodes on YouTube.
Oh yeah, before Hasbro and every other company started going copyright ham on YouTube.
Yeah, back in them days, watching episodes was easy.
Oh yeah, now you have to hunt for them because half of them are on, 4 seasons are on Netflix. There's 1 season on Hulu. I don't know where the other seasons are. I mean, you can purchase them through like iTunes or Amazon Prime or whatever, but
it's not as easy as it used to be. That's for sure.
Definitely
but,
not.
Yeah, my entire adult life can be traced back to that moment.
Yeah,
which is wild to think about.
Yeah, and some of the funny situations that have happened since joining the fandom, like just wearing pony-related shirts outside of conventions or just in general, and just the comments that random strangers be like, "What is that you're wearing?"
I never really got too many of those.
I had a lot of them while I was in the Marine Corps.
Well, that's not surprising. But at least where I lived at the time, people were kind of live and let live about it for the most part.
Yeah, most people didn't care. It's just like...
We also had a pretty big community up there where, a group of, young 20-somethings walking into the Hot Topic at the local mall and walking out with a giant bag of pony shirts and flags.
Yes, when Hot Topic was selling lots of pony merch.
The blind bags. Oh, man. Yes, back when getting pony merch was like the thing to do.
Yeah, and again, we're getting off topic, but Rainbow has successfully gotten everybody across the bridge, proven their loyalty, and now
we are inside the castle.
The castle, which
is another location that becomes relevant much later on.
Yes, and also the castle seems to
be in a very large state of disrepair.
Yes, even though in future episodes it seems to be more complete and not as in much of disrepair.
And also in a valley and not on top of a cliffside.
Yeah, it's an interesting location, and it's really cool to see how this location
changes.
Well, not just changes visually for the plot and stuff, but it also is cool to see that this location is used multiple times. There's a lot of plot throughout the series that revolves around this location, even all the way up to season 8 and 9.
Yeah, I mean, this particular location gets revisited again and again throughout the whole series. Not so much early on, but definitely later.
It really doesn't make another appearance until I think season 2.
I know it's really important in the season 4 opener.
Yeah, definitely season 4.
And just to clarify, we're talking about the castle of the two sisters deep within the Everfree Forest.
Yes.
Which is a location that really I wish had seen a lot more screen time than it did.
Yeah, I mean, we get like 1 or 2 flashbacks to it later on.
It gets mentioned a couple times, a couple of flashbacks. But like I said, I don't think it gets really seen.
But I mean, the main reason we're here at this location is our heroes are trying to find the gemstones or the
elements of harmony,
the artifacts that represent the elements of harmony,
which we don't really know what they look like yet. I mean, there's an illustration in the book that Twilight has
that depicts gemstones, but we get shown them. They're all sitting on a pedestal, but there's only 5 of them.
There's only 5 of them.
And they all look like gray rocks.
They all look like granite stones with
Yeah.
Varying symbols on them.
And Twilight tries to activate them to summon the sixth element, which they don't know what it is yet.
Because a spark will reveal the sixth element.
Yes.
Or so the legend says.
Our other heroes walk off screen just a little bit.
To give Twilight her space, of course.
Yeah, to try to magic up a sixth element. And Nightmare Moon makes another appearance.
Because, of course.
And whisks them away. And Twilight manages to get sucked up into the teleportation.
They get teleported to another portion of the castle, which
is a little
like
more
a throne room.
Yeah, it's throne room, which again changes a lot in future episodes. Like it looks completely different.
Yeah, this is like at the top of like a tower almost.
Yeah.
Whereas in future episodes, we see the throne room more like within the main portion.
Yeah,
of the
main hall, which is where most throne rooms are in castles.
Yeah. Now this moment between Twilight and Nightmare Moon,
it's pretty funny.
It's pretty entertaining.
Twilight looks like she's gonna charge, and Nightmare's like, "Really, you're gonna do this?"
Just
okay.
Literally just go, "You're kidding, right?" Like just the amount of disbelief. It's that moment right there, I think, is what I knew I was hooked.
Yeah, it's like
just looking at Twilight literally stomping on the ground like she's gonna charge Nightmare Moon, and Nightmare Moon going like, "Really? We're doing this? We're really gonna do this? All right." Good stuff.
We get a scene where Twilight tries to activate the stones again. They start sparking. Nightmare Moon tries to disrupt it.
Twilight is hit with a spark.
She is.
She is hit with a spark.
And knocked flying backwards.
Nightmare Moon, however, believes that because the stone stopped glowing, that it didn't work. Yeah. And in a triumphant stomp, shatters the apparent elements of harmony.
Yeah. To me, like, an ancient artifact like that, you'd think it would be a little more durable.
You would think.
But I mean, an Alcorn does have kind of some super strength behind them.
Well, at least that's what we're led to believe.
Yeah, that's what we're led to believe.
But at this point, the remaining members of the main six finally catch back up. They've reached the top of this tower, and Twilight has her big epiphany. We get a zoom in of her face. We see her eyes grow wide, and there's a spark in her eyes.
Yeah, I always love those visual representations within cartoons or some sort of video game, movie, other TV show, whether it be live action or not, cartoons, anime, where the character gets like, you get a big visual cue for, hey, they just had the light bulb moment go off. Those are always fun moments.
It's really great to see how they're done throughout each cartoon. And in this one, I think it's done really well. Because it's actually really subtle.
Yeah, it's subtle, but it's there.
And it is a spark. And we don't really catch it at first. But Twilight, of course, begins to go through each of the characters and the trials that Nightmare Moon has given them. Which... another interesting thing to note here is that Twilight seems to be the only one that caught on that this was in fact Nightmare Moon testing them. None of the other characters really seemed to catch on to this fact. But Twilight knew. Yeah. Somehow. She knew. And as she goes through, she names off that Applejack is in fact representing the element of honesty. Fluttershy is the element of kindness.
Rarity's generosity. Rainbow's loyalty. And
Pinky's laughter. And... Nightmare Moon's like, well, hang on, that's only 5.
What about the 6th one?
And then, of course, Twilight gets into her heroic monologue about, oh, well, the spark worked, and it's a different kind of spark, because I realized you're all my friends, and the final element appears out of nowhere at the top of the throne room, floats down, and we get this bright, colorful transformation scene where each of the broken stones...
Yay, magical girl transformation!
Very, very magical transformation here, where we see each of the broken shards begin to float around each of the main characters. They all form various pieces of jewelry, for the most part necklaces, and then Twilight has a tiara.
Yeah, and it's a very elaborate tiara.
Very elaborate looking tiara. And what's noteworthy is that each of these pieces of jewelry has a gemstone that is in the shape of the cutie mark that is... the bearer that they represent.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about the cutie marks yet. I think that's a very interesting plot point that is brought up throughout Generation 4.
Very important plot point that makes up, God, I don't even know how.
Like half of the personality of the characters.
At least half. And it becomes a lot more apparent with another storyline that we'll be seeing later on in this particular season.
Yeah.
But just to give a brief overview, cutie marks are supposed to represent a
special talent.
talent.
What the pony is really good at.
Yeah, it's nothing more than a picture on their flank. For example, Rainbow Dash has a lightning bolt coming out of a cloud.
It's a cool lightning bolt.
It is a pretty dope lightning bolt. I mean, it's red.
And I mean, I've seen some really nice tattoos that people have of that cutie mark.
You know, I think I've seen more tattoos of the apples than I have the lightning bolt.
Really? I've seen mostly the lightning bolt.
You know which one I don't think I've seen? Rarities.
Yeah, Rarities. I hardly see...
Don't think I've ever seen anyone with a Rarity tattoo.
She's definitely, I would say, the least popular out of the main characters.
You think so?
That's
I would
my
have probably
gathering.
said Pinky, personally.
I definitely don't see as many people cosplaying Rarity or really talking. I even think she has less fan art than most of the other characters. That'd have to be a correction for the next
I might
episode.
have to look into that.
Yeah, I have to look into it.
Hey, by the way, in the first episode, we were idiotic. We didn't know what we were talking about. Here's the actual numbers.
Disclaimer.
You have to retcon the first episode.
Yeah. Anyways, Twilight talks about the element of magic, which personally I like because that's her talent. She's really good at magic, but I personally think that the sixth element should have been called the element of friendship over magic. Just kind of fits the theme more, but
A little bit. But, you know, there is a sort of magic to friendship. As cliche as it is.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Like, absolutely
It's very true.
cliche as that is. But we do find out that, you know, magic is not something that a lot of unicorns
Excel at.
particularly good at. Yes.
It's throughout the series, most of the time, most unicorns, unless they're like super gifted and end up studying at Celestia School for Gifted Unicorns, which is where Twilight was attending. We don't find out the name until later. But most unicorns
They get
tend
a
to
handful of spells that are really only related to what they're good at.
that, or they're just like handy, everyday
There's a
utility
handful,
spells.
You know, generic spells like telekinesis. Every
Yeah.
unicorn can lift something with their horn
Yeah,
and magic.
like utility magic, pretty much.
But
And magic's
Twilight-
a whole different thing because depending on what franchise or universe you're in, magic works differently.
Well, of course. But Twilight seems to be a special case here. It's not evident just yet. We'll find this out in a later episode.
But
Very
not many
soon.
unicorns can teleport.
The whole teleporting thing, even she seemed a little worn out by that the first time we see it.
Yeah, the first, like, throughout the first season, every time she does it, she seems pretty worn out after doing it just once.
So we understand that Twilight is gifted, but not very strong yet.
Yeah, she's definitely still a very young unicorn that is growing. Her magic isn't quite what it is. It's almost as if they have, like, a pool of magic that they can use before they burn out.
It's almost like a muscle.
Yeah,
You know, the
almost
more-
like a muscle.
The more you use it, the more you strain it, and the more you run the risk of burning out.
Yes, or the opposite of the more you use it in the appropriate manner, the more you practice, the stronger it gets, the more it can do. But
It's an interesting way to handle magic in this particular universe, especially since, as we learn, each of the main types of ponies, they all have their own forms of magic. We saw it earlier in the first episode.
yeah,
Where Pegasi, not only can they fly,
they can control the weather.
I
mean,
we
pushing
see-
clouds around.
we
Wish
see-
we could do that.
yeah, we see Rainbow Dash pulling a random cloud out of nowhere and stomping on it to make it rain.
Yeah, I mean, I wish we could do that.
It's a little
we would-
toasty out here right now.
Yeah, it's a little toasty here. Plus, it would help worldwide with being able to control droughts and stuff. But, anyways, we get to like the last couple minutes of the second episode, and
Just the series premiere. It's almost
Yeah.
over.
and I think by the end of this, most people are already hooked on watching, and then end up at some point in their watching of season 1, go down the rabbit hole, discover the community and all the stuff that's come from it.
So in the final moments, we see the sun finally rise off in the distance over the horizon.
And we hear the glorious sound of Princess Celestia.
We are introduced
Right.
to the current sole monarch of Equestria.
Yes, and very unique design. She's way taller than everyone else.
Way taller, like twice the height of any of the other characters.
Yeah, and like I think there was like at some point like a visual representation that like she's the equivalent height of the average human male.
Yeah, like
in real
she's,
life.
like humongous
Yeah,
compared to all the other ponies.
which I mean is still quite small compared to real life horses.
Yeah, I mean they are after all little ponies.
Yes, little ponies that I think that the equivalent that we could compare them to a real life horse would be like a miniature horse.
Yeah, an actual miniature horse. But anyway, we see immediately that Princess Celestia and Twilight share a close bond.
Yes,
Yeah,
and
that
then
Celestia has like an almost motherly sort of
a
personality.
motherly mentor like demeanor about her.
Very soft spoken, very kind, very
Doesn't seem like she gets angry very often.
no, she's really pretty chill.
Yeah, she might get disappointed.
Like
But-
like she wasn't even mad about being captured. We don't really understand what
Yeah.
happened to her.
Yeah, I mean, there were so many fan fictions or theories on what happened to her after Nightmare Moon came back and what happened in between. Like, some people were thinking, oh, she got banished to the sun or whatever.
But we see her come back, greet Twilight, and immediately turn to Princess Luna.
which is our second Alicorn royalty. And, I mean, the visual difference between this episode and the next time we see Princess Luna is blew my mind. It's like they just redesigned the whole character.
Yeah, so we see Princess Luna here as a rather young character.
Like almost Twilight's age, it seems like.
She does not have the ethereal mane that Nightmare Moon or Celestia possess. She looks like just an average blue-colored pony, just
Yeah.
with wings and a horn.
Yeah, I mean, she's not much bigger than your average pony in here.
No, a very, very stark contrast to the next time we see her, which unfortunately is not until season 2.
Yeah, sadly. I mean, but Princess Luna became an instant classic and fan favorite. I mean, there's still a debate on which Alicorn is best Alicorn, but
The answer is Princess Cadence. I mean,
I mean, that's a whole nother debate. Some would say it's Celestia, some would say it's Luna, some would say it's Cadence, some would say it's Twilight, like I do. But
we shall not name the fifth one.
the fifth one will go unknown until season 6. Oh crap! I spoiled for those who haven't watched season 3 yet that Twilight's a princess at some point.
Well, I'll just say that if you didn't know that at this point, congratulations. You somehow managed to avoid a major plot point.
And I'm sorry for spoiling it for those who haven't gotten there yet.
Shame. But at the end of the episode, we are treated to a little montage of Pinky throwing a massive party for Princess Luna's reappearance.
Yay,
arrive.
parties!
They arrive on a chariot pulled by a quartet of royal guardsmen.
Yep, and a much more
Ornate.
ornate chariot than the one that Twilight arrived on, which for some reason is still sitting in the middle of Ponyville.
Princess Luna is given a wreath of flowers, and Twilight appears rather forlorn.
Like, oh,
It's
this
over.
is it. This is over. I'm
Yeah.
going to have to go back to Canterlot in school.
And
I don't want to go.
Princess Celestia takes note of this and decides, because, obviously this isn't the whole story, Princess Celestia decides that Twilight is just going to move to Ponyville.
Yeah, no, you're living here now.
Yeah, you're out of Canterlot. This is now your new home.
I'm kicking you out of school. You get to live here now. You're doing remote learning.
Yeah, she relocates Twilight to the Golden Oaks Library permanently to continue to study the magic of friendship.
Rest in peace, Golden Oaks Library.
Oh, but that's a whole nother plot point.
Yeah, and then we get to see the cutaway as we leave the episode, and we get the first instance of Pinkie Pie breaking the fourth wall.
We see way too much of that.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, there was that whole death battle video that somebody did between Pinkie Pie and Deadpool, like who breaks the fourth wall better. It's,
Pinkie.
But
I gotta say, like, of all the main 6, I think her episodes tend to be my least favorite.
Yeah, I will definitely agree there.
Because each of the main 6 gets their own, as we've mentioned, their own series of episodes.
Yeah, like, I think each character gets like 2 or 3 each season.
At least.
That's just dedicated to them. If not, they're paired up with one of their friends.
They each have their own story to live throughout each of the seasons. And
yeah.
Pinkie's is almost, like, disappointing in a lot of ways.
It's disappointing. Twilight, definitely, you see the most growth out of Twilight. But I think Rainbows is probably one of my favorite.
Her, I think, is
arcs.
the most gratifying.
It definitely is.
Her rarities are, I think, the most gratifying.
Yes, because Applejack really doesn't have a whole lot of.
It's like I mentioned before. She's already got everything.
Yeah, she just has to be reminded every once in a while what honesty is. But I definitely, when we get to our second group of main characters for plot B and how cutie marks work, Apple Bloom and
the other
two friends of hers definitely have a interesting story and a very gratifying.
Yeah, their story is very gratifying to watch reach its conclusion.
Yeah, I remember watching that episode when we get to it. The fandom went nuts.
Oh god, because we all knew it was going to happen.
Oh yeah,
we all knew it was going to happen.
We're like, oh, is this finally the episode?
Do they finally get their goal? And they finally did in a pretty big way.
They did, and I mean, obviously, we'll get around to talking about that.
But that's a long way away. We got a lot of ground to cover between here and
5 seasons before we even get there.
Yep. But anyway, that's it for the series premiere of Friendship is Magic. Up next is episode 3, The Ticketmaster. I'm Zenith.
And I'm Onyx.
Till next time.
Till next time.